The observation deck hummed with quiet efficiency as Zara 7 reviewed the latest batch of test results. Through the transparent aluminum walls, Earth hung like a blue marble against the star-filled void, completely unaware of the massive station orbiting just outside its detection range. For 2 centuries, the Galactic Assessment Council had maintained this vigil, conducting their most important evaluation in recorded history. "Another success," reported her assistant, Keth 9, his 4 arms dancing across multiple data streams simultaneously. "The subjects in what they call Ukraine have demonstrated remarkable resilience under extreme adversity. Even when outnumbered and outgunned, they continue to resist." Zara 7's scaled brow furrowed as she absorbed the information. The humans below had no idea that their recent conflicts were being carefully monitored and, when necessary, subtly influenced to test specific behavioral patterns. The Council needed to understand these strange bipedal creatures before making their final decision about Earth's fate. "Show me the psychological profiles from their leadership during this crisis," she commanded, her 6 eyes focusing on different displays as data flowed across her screens. The information painted a picture that continued to confuse and intrigue the Council observers. These humans possessed something the galaxy had never encountered before, an almost irrational willingness to sacrifice for others, even strangers. During their recent pandemic, healthcare workers had repeatedly risked their own lives to save patients. During natural disasters, ordinary citizens became heroes. During wars, soldiers chose death over abandoning their comrades. "It makes no logical sense," muttered Dr. Vex 12 from his position at the Behavioral Analysis Station. The insectoid scientist's antennae twitched with frustration. "Every other species we've encountered follows predictable patterns of self-preservation. But these humans—" He gestured at a screen showing a human firefighter running into a burning building. "They repeatedly endanger themselves for others, with no guarantee of survival or reward." Zara 7 had been asking herself the same question for decades. As the lead observer for the Human Assessment Project, she had watched these creatures evolve from primitive hunter-gatherers to a species capable of splitting atoms and reaching for the stars. What should have taken them millions of years, they had accomplished in mere millennia. "Run the data from their space programs again," she ordered. The displays filled with images of human space exploration. Despite having only recently discovered flight, they had managed to put members of their species on their moon within a single century. More impressive was how they had done it. Not through conquest or domination like most species, but through unprecedented cooperation. Scientists from different nations, often historical enemies, worked together to push the boundaries of their knowledge. "The anomaly isn't just their rapid advancement," noted Keth 9, pulling up comparative evolutionary charts. "It's their approach to advancement. Look at this." The screen showed side-by-side progressions. On the left, the typical galactic species followed a predictable pattern: tribal warfare, gradual technological development, planetary unification through conquest, then expansion into space as a single dominant culture. The progression usually took 10 to 15 million years. On the right, humanity's chaotic but accelerated path looked completely different. Multiple competing civilizations developing simultaneously, sharing knowledge even while fighting each other, creating art and philosophy while developing weapons, showing compassion to enemies while waging wars for survival. They had done in 10,000 years what typically required millions, and they had done it while maintaining their diversity instead of homogenizing into a single culture. "There's something else," Vex 12 announced, his voice carrying an unusual tension. "The creativity measurements are off the charts." Zara 7 turned all 6 eyes toward him. "Explain." "Every species we've evaluated shows creativity levels that plateau once their basic survival needs are met. It's logical. Once you have food, shelter, and security, the evolutionary pressure for innovation decreases. Vex 12's claws clicked nervously on his console. But humans, they keep creating. Even when their survival is assured, they make art, music, stories. They invent things they don't need just because they're curious. They ask questions about the universe even when the answers serve no practical purpose. This was the mystery that had kept the assessment project running for 2 centuries instead of the planned 50 years. The Council had expected to find another typical species, one that followed the established patterns of galactic civilization. Instead, they had discovered something unprecedented. "Pull up the records from their recent global challenges," Zara 7 requested. The screens filled with data from the past few decades. Climate change, pandemics, economic crises, wars. Humanity had faced multiple extinction-level threats. Yet instead of fragmenting or reverting to primitive survival modes like other species typically did, they had responded with innovation and cooperation on a scale never before recorded. When their climate began changing, they didn't just adapt. They invented new technologies to address the root causes. When disease threatened their population, they developed vaccines in record time and shared the knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for advantage. When economic systems failed, they created new ones rather than returning to older, simpler models. It's almost like they view challenges as puzzles to solve rather than threats to survive, observed Keth 9. Zara 7 nodded thoughtfully. This was exactly what made the humans so unusual. Most species, when threatened, reverted to survival instincts that had served them for millions of years. Humans seemed to do the opposite. They became more innovative, more cooperative, more creative when faced with existential challenges. "Show me the data from their literature and entertainment," she commanded. This was perhaps the most puzzling aspect of human behavior. Even their fiction revealed something extraordinary about their psychology. While other species created stories about conquest, dominance, and survival, humans consistently created narratives about sacrifice, redemption, and hope. Their heroes weren't always the strongest or smartest. Often they were ordinary individuals who chose to do the right thing despite personal cost. Look at this pattern. Vex 12 highlighted several data points. Their most popular stories consistently feature protagonists who refuse to abandon others, even when doing so would ensure their own survival. They celebrate characters who sacrifice themselves for strangers. They create fictional heroes who choose death before dishonor. Zara 7 studied the patterns. It wasn't just their fiction. Their historical records showed the same tendencies playing out in reality. Humans regularly risked everything to save others. They had individuals who died rather than betray their principles. They had soldiers who threw themselves on explosives to save their comrades. They had civilians who hid strangers from persecution at the cost of their own safety. "Have we seen anything like this before?" she asked the archives. "Negative," came the synthesized response from the main database. No evaluated species has demonstrated comparable levels of altruistic behavior combined with technological advancement and creative output. This was the problem. The Galactic Assessment Council had been formed after the wars with the Zilithians, a species that had developed advanced technology but used it purely for conquest and destruction. They had nearly destroyed half the galaxy before being stopped. The Council's mandate was simple: evaluate developing species and determine whether they posed a similar threat once they achieved interstellar travel. The assessment process was thorough and took centuries. Species were observed, tested through carefully orchestrated challenges, and their responses analyzed. Those deemed too aggressive or destructive were quietly prevented from advancing beyond their home systems, sometimes through subtle technological interference, sometimes through more direct intervention. Humanity should have been easy to categorize. They were clearly aggressive, having fought continuous wars throughout their recorded history. They were competitive, constantly struggling against each other for resources and dominance. They had developed increasingly destructive weapons, culminating in devices capable of destroying their entire planet. By all logical measures, they should have been classified as a threat and contained. But the data told a different story. "Run the warfare analysis again," Zara 7 ordered. The results appeared on her screen, just as confusing as always. Yes, humans fought wars, but they fought them differently than any other species. They had rules about warfare, concepts like civilian protection, medical neutrality, and prisoner treatment that they actually tried to follow even when it disadvantaged them strategically. They regularly risked their own lives to save enemy wounded. They provided aid to defeated enemies instead of simply eliminating them. Most bizarre of all, they seemed to learn from their conflicts in ways that made them less likely to repeat the same mistakes. Their wars had become less frequent and less destructive over time, not more. "There's another anomaly," Keth 9 reported. "Their response to space exploration." Zara 7 turned her attention to the relevant data. When most species first achieved spaceflight, they immediately began looking for resources to exploit or enemies to defeat. Humans had started by sending messages of friendship to anyone who might be listening. Their first instinct upon reaching beyond their world was to try to communicate, not conquer. "They're actively searching for other intelligent life," Vex 12 noted, "and their primary goal seems to be communication and cooperation, not competition." This violated every established pattern. Species that achieved interstellar travel capability typically did so with the explicit goal of expansion and resource acquisition. Humans appeared to be reaching for the stars primarily out of curiosity and a desire to connect with others. "What do the psychological projections indicate for their behavior once they achieve faster-than-light travel?" Zara 7 queried the analysis systems. The projections appeared on screen, accompanied by probability matrices and behavioral modeling charts. The results were unprecedented in the Council's records. Instead of the typical pattern of aggressive expansion and resource competition, the models suggested humans would likely approach interstellar contact with a combination of caution, curiosity, and a desire for mutual cooperation. They showed a high probability of attempting to establish peaceful relationships with other species, sharing technology and knowledge rather than hoarding it for competitive advantage. "The models actually suggest," Vex 12 said slowly, reading the detailed analysis, "that contact with other intelligent species would accelerate their cooperative tendencies rather than triggering their competitive ones." Zara 7 felt a strange sensation she had never experienced in her 3 centuries of life, uncertainty about her fundamental assumptions. Everything about human behavior challenged the established understanding of species development and galactic survival patterns. "How long until they achieve interstellar travel capability?" she asked. "Current projections indicate approximately 50 to 75 years, Keth 9 responded. "Their rate of technological advancement has actually been accelerating, particularly in areas of space travel, energy production, and communication. This meant the Council would soon need to make their decision about humanity's future. The standard protocols were clear. Species that posed a potential threat to galactic stability were to be contained or eliminated before they could spread beyond their home systems. But humans didn't fit the threat profile, despite their obvious capacity for destruction. "There's something else," Vex 12 announced hesitantly. "Something that doesn't appear in any of our previous evaluations." Zara 7 gestured for him to continue. "They're demonstrating what can only be described as moral evolution," he said carefully. "Not just technological or social evolution, but actual changes in their ethical frameworks that make them more cooperative and less destructive over time." The implications of this statement sent ripples of confusion through the observation deck. Moral evolution was considered impossible by galactic scientific consensus. Species were what they were. Their core behavioral patterns might be modified by circumstance, but fundamental changes in ethical orientation were thought to be biologically impossible. "Show me the evidence," Zara 7 demanded. The displays filled with historical data spanning humanity's recorded civilization. The pattern was subtle, but undeniable. Practices that had been considered normal and acceptable in earlier eras, slavery, genocide, environmental destruction, had gradually become universally condemned. Not just legally prohibited, but actually viewed as morally reprehensible by the majority of their species. They're literally becoming more ethical as a species, Vex 12 concluded, and this appears to be accelerating as their technology advances, not declining as the standard models predict. Zara 7 studied the data in fascination. Most species became more ruthless as their technology advanced, using their increased capabilities to dominate their environment and eliminate competition. Humans seem to be doing the opposite, using their advancing capabilities to solve problems and help more of their population survive and thrive. "What are the implications for our assessment?" Keth 9 asked. That was the question that had been troubling Zara 7 for decades. The Council had been established to protect the galaxy from species like the Zilithians, aggressive, destructive civilizations that would use advanced technology to conquer and destroy. But what were they supposed to do with a species that appeared to be becoming more cooperative and ethical as they advanced? "We need to run extended projections," she decided. "Model their behavior patterns over the next 500 years based on current trends." The computers hummed as they processed the complex calculations. The results, when they appeared, were unlike anything in the Council's databases. Instead of the typical pattern of expansion, resource competition, and eventual stagnation or self-destruction, the models suggested humans would likely become a stabilizing influence in the galaxy. Their tendency toward cooperation, combined with their innovative capabilities and ethical evolution, suggested they might actually help other species resolve conflicts and advance their own development. The projections indicate, Keth 9 read carefully, a 78% probability that human contact with the galactic community would result in overall reduced conflict and increased cooperative development among existing species. Zara 7 stared at the results. In 300 years of galactic assessment, no species had ever received a projection suggesting they would improve the galactic community rather than threatening it. "Run it again," she ordered. "Check the parameters." The analysis repeated with identical results. The humans weren't just non-threatening. They were potentially beneficial to galactic civilization in ways no species had ever been before. But this created an entirely different problem. The Council's protocols had no provision for species that might actually improve the galactic community. They were designed to identify and contain threats, not to evaluate potential allies or partners. "We need to contact the High Council," Zara 7 announced finally. "This is beyond our assessment parameters." As her assistants began preparing the communication, Zara 7 found herself looking down at the blue world below with entirely new eyes. For 200 years, they had been conducting secret trials to determine whether humanity deserved to survive contact with galactic civilization. Now she was beginning to wonder whether galactic civilization deserved to meet humanity. The message queue showed 17 more assessment reports waiting for her review, each containing evidence of human behavior that defied conventional understanding of species development. Medical researchers sharing discoveries freely instead of profiting from them. Engineers designing technologies specifically to help disadvantaged populations. Artists creating works that brought different cultures together instead of driving them apart. As she began reviewing the next report, Zara 7 couldn't shake the feeling that their 2-century evaluation of humanity was about to reveal something far more significant than anyone in the Council had anticipated. The secret trials had been designed to judge whether humans were worthy of joining galactic civilization. Instead, they might be discovering that galactic civilization needed humans more than humans needed them. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the data streaming across her monitors in the Deep Space Observation Center, her coffee growing cold as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. For the past 18 months, her team at MIT had been tracking anomalous gravitational readings in Earth's orbital vicinity, and the patterns were becoming impossible to ignore. "Run the calculations again," she told her research assistant, Marcus Webb, who was hunched over his own bank of computers. "There's something out there, and it's big." Marcus looked up from his screen, his young face creased with fatigue. They had been working 16-hour days for weeks, chasing shadows in the data that seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. "Sarah, I've run it 12 times. The gravitational signature is consistent with a structure approximately 2 kilometers in length, maintaining a stable orbit just outside our normal detection range." Sarah shook her head. "That's impossible. We would have seen something that large decades ago." But even as she said it, she knew something was wrong. The readings were too consistent, too regular to be equipment malfunction or space debris. Whatever was out there had been there for a long time, and it was artificial. 3,000 miles away, in a bunker deep beneath NORAD headquarters, Colonel James Mitchell was having his own moment of realization. The electromagnetic signatures his team had been tracking for months were showing patterns that made his skin crawl. Not because they were threatening, but because they were clearly intelligent. "Sir," said Lieutenant Torres, her voice tight with controlled excitement, "the signal patterns are definitely communication protocols. They're not trying to contact us. They're talking to each other." Mitchell studied the display showing electromagnetic traffic patterns around Earth's orbital space. The signals were sophisticated, using frequency modulations that suggested technology far beyond anything humans had developed. But they had been there all along, hidden in the background noise that his equipment usually filtered out. "How long have we been receiving these signals?" he asked. "Based on the archive analysis, at least 40 years, Torres replied. "Possibly longer. We just never knew what to look for." Mitchell felt a chill run down his spine. 40 years of alien communications happening right above their heads, and they had been completely unaware. What else had they missed? In Geneva, Dr. Yuki Tanaka was discovering her own piece of the puzzle. As a particle physicist working on the Large Hadron Collider project, she had become interested in unusual energy readings that appeared during specific astronomical alignments. The patterns suggested someone was scanning Earth with technology that left barely detectable traces in the quantum field fluctuations. "The scans are incredibly sophisticated," she explained to her colleague, Dr. Robert Finch, as they reviewed months of accumulated data. "Whatever is doing this understands quantum mechanics at a level we're just beginning to reach." "But why scan us?" Robert asked, his British accent thick with concern. "And why be so careful to remain hidden?" Yuki had been asking herself the same questions for weeks. The scanning patterns were too regular and comprehensive to be casual observation. Someone was conducting a detailed, long-term study of Earth and its inhabitants, and they were going to great lengths to avoid detection. "Look at this," she said, highlighting a series of data points. The scans intensify during periods of human conflict or crisis. The 2008 financial crisis, the COVID pandemic, the recent conflicts in Eastern Europe, every major global event corresponds with increased scanning activity. The implications were unsettling. Whatever was watching them seemed particularly interested in how humans responded to stress and adversity. Meanwhile, in the Amazon rainforest, Dr. Ana Gutierrez was making discoveries that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. As an environmental scientist studying climate change effects on biodiversity, she had noticed subtle but consistent patterns in how certain ecosystems were recovering from human-caused damage. "It doesn't make sense," she told her research partner, Dr. David Kim, as they stood in a section of forest that should have been devastated by recent deforestation. "The recovery rate is too fast," too organized. It's like something is helping the forest heal itself. David knelt to examine soil samples that showed impossible levels of beneficial microorganisms. Anna, this soil composition would take decades to develop naturally, but it's happened in less than 2 years. They had found similar anomalies across multiple sites. Polluted waterways cleaning themselves faster than natural processes could account for. Endangered species populations recovering at unprecedented rates. Climate patterns shifting in ways that seemed to minimize the worst effects of global warming. Someone is intervening, Anna concluded. But who? And why? The breakthrough came when Sarah Chen decided to share her gravitational data with colleagues around the world. Within hours of posting her findings on a secure research network, she received messages from scientists on 6 continents reporting similar anomalies. Colonel Mitchell's electromagnetic signals, Dr. Tanaka's quantum scanning evidence, Dr. Gutierrez's environmental intervention data, Dr. Elena Petrov's space weather observations from Russia, Dr. Ahmed Hassan's satellite tracking irregularities from Egypt, Dr. Maria Santos's deep ocean acoustic anomalies from Brazil. Individually, each discovery could be dismissed as equipment error or natural phenomena. Together, they painted a picture that was both fascinating and terrifying. "We're not alone," Sarah whispered during their first global video conference. "And we haven't been alone for a very long time." The assembled scientists stared at their screens in silence as the full implications sank in. Someone had been watching Earth for decades, possibly centuries, conducting what appeared to be comprehensive studies of human civilization while remaining completely hidden. "The question is," said Colonel Mitchell, speaking from his secure facility, "are they benign observers, or are we specimens in some kind of experiment?" Dr. Tanaka pulled up her quantum scanning data. "Based on the sophistication and duration of the observations, I'd say we're being evaluated. The scanning patterns are too systematic to be mere curiosity." "Evaluated for what?" asked Dr. Petrov from her laboratory in Moscow. That was the question that kept them all awake at night. The evidence suggested their observers were incredibly advanced, with technology that made human science look primitive. If they had hostile intentions, they could have acted against humanity at any time over the past several decades. Instead, they had remained hidden, watching and apparently helping in subtle ways. "Look at the environmental data," Dr. Gutierrez interjected, sharing her findings with the group. "The interventions are always helpful, never harmful. Climate disasters that should have been catastrophic are reduced in severity. Ecosystems recover faster than they should. It's like someone is quietly fixing the damage we cause." Dr. Santos nodded from Brazil. "I've been tracking similar patterns in the oceans. Pollution levels drop mysteriously in certain areas. Fish populations recover in regions where they should have collapsed. Someone is actively helping our planet heal." "But why remain hidden?" Dr. Hassan asked from Cairo. "If they're trying to help, why not make contact openly?" Colonel Mitchell had been wondering the same thing. "Maybe because they're not sure about us yet. Maybe we're still being tested." Dr. Chen pulled up astronomical data showing the gravitational signatures over time. "The structure I've been tracking shows activity patterns that correlate with major human events. Wars, natural disasters, technological breakthroughs. They're watching how we handle significant challenges." "It's like they're conducting behavioral assessments," Dr. Tanaka realized, "measuring our responses to different types of stress to determine our character as a species." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been unknowingly participating in some kind of cosmic evaluation for decades, possibly centuries. Every major decision, every crisis response, every act of cooperation or conflict had been observed and analyzed by intelligences far more advanced than their own. "We need more data," Sarah declared. "If we're being evaluated, we need to understand the criteria. What are they looking for? What determines whether we pass or fail their test?" Over the following weeks, the group worked frantically to piece together the full scope of the observation program. They identified scanning stations on the dark side of the moon, cloaked satellites in high Earth orbit, and deep ocean monitoring stations that had been operating undetected for decades. The technology involved was breathtaking in its sophistication. The observers had achieved complete invisibility through a combination of advanced materials, energy-dampening fields, and what appeared to be manipulation of space-time itself. They had been studying humanity with the same careful attention that human scientists might study a newly discovered species. "They've been documenting everything," Dr. Petrov reported after analyzing communication intercepts. "Population genetics, technological development, social evolution, cultural patterns, even individual psychological profiles of key leaders and innovators." "How many of them are there?" asked Dr. Kim, who had joined the research effort after the environmental discoveries became too significant to ignore. The evidence suggested a substantial presence. At least 12 major observation stations, hundreds of monitoring devices, and what appeared to be a permanent staff of researchers and analysts. Earth had been under comprehensive surveillance by an advanced civilization for generations. "But here's the strange part," Dr. Santos observed, reviewing oceanic data. "They're not just observing passively. They're subtly influencing events to test specific responses." The group began identifying interventions that had shaped recent history, economic crises that had been mysteriously resolved through unexpected cooperation, natural disasters that had brought out the best in human nature rather than causing societal collapse, technological breakthroughs that had emerged just when they were most needed to solve critical problems. "They're not just testing us," Sarah realized. "They're giving us opportunities to demonstrate our best qualities." "Or our worst," Colonel Mitchell added grimly. "Some of these tests could have gone very differently." Dr. Tanaka pulled up data from the recent pandemic response. "Look at this. The virus mutation patterns, the speed of vaccine development, the global cooperation in sharing research, there are too many coincidences. I think they influenced the situation to see how we would respond to a species-threatening crisis." "And we passed," Dr. Gutierrez said softly. "We developed vaccines faster than should have been possible, shared them freely with other nations, and maintained scientific cooperation even while our governments were struggling with political tensions." The pattern was becoming clear. Humanity was being tested on its capacity for cooperation, innovation, and moral growth under pressure. Every major crisis of the past century had been an examination, and apparently they had been performing better than their observers had expected. "There's something else," Dr. Hassan announced from Cairo, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and concern. "I've been analyzing the timing of their interventions, and there's a pattern. They're preparing us for something." "Preparing us for what?" Sarah asked. Ahmed pulled up his analysis showing the escalating complexity of the tests and interventions over time. "The challenges are getting more sophisticated, requiring higher levels of global cooperation and technological capability. It's like they're building up our skills for something bigger." "First contact," Dr. Petrov said quietly. "They're preparing us for first contact." The silence that followed was profound. If their analysis was correct, humanity was approaching the end of a centuries-long evaluation period. The observers would soon need to decide whether humans were ready to join whatever larger community existed among the stars. "The question is," Colonel Mitchell said finally, "do we wait for them to make that decision, or do we take action ourselves?" Sarah looked around at her colleagues on the video conference. Seeing the same mixture of fear and excitement she felt reflected in their faces. They had stumbled upon the greatest discovery in human history, but they were also facing the most important decision their species had ever confronted. "If we reveal what we know," she said slowly, "if we acknowledge their presence and let them know we figured out what they're doing, there's no going back. Either they accept us as equals and make open contact, or Or they decide we're not ready and take steps to ensure we remain isolated, Dr. Tanaka finished. The weight of the decision was overwhelming. The fate of humanity's future among the stars might depend on the choice this small group of scientists made in the next few days. There's one more thing, Dr. Santos said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been tracking their communication patterns and something has changed. The volume of traffic between their stations has increased dramatically in the past month. Whatever decision they're going to make about us, I think they're going to make it soon. Time was running out. Humanity's secret evaluation was approaching its conclusion, and the observers were preparing to render their verdict. The only question was whether humans would wait passively for judgment or take control of their own destiny by revealing that the test subjects had finally discovered they were being tested. The next few days would determine whether humanity took its first steps toward joining galactic civilization or remained forever isolated on their small blue planet, never knowing how close they had come to touching the stars. The decision was made on a Tuesday morning when Dr. Sarah Chen received an encrypted message that changed everything. The global network of scientists had been debating for weeks about whether to reveal their knowledge of the observers, but the choice was suddenly taken out of their hands. Sarah! Marcus Webb burst into her office, his face pale with excitement and terror. You need to see this. They know that we know. The message displayed on her computer screen was written in perfect English, but the formatting and delivery method were impossible by any known technology. It had appeared simultaneously on the private computers of all 12 scientists in their research group, bypassing every security protocol and firewall without leaving any trace of how it had been transmitted. Dr. Chen and colleagues, your recent discoveries have been noted with considerable interest. We request a meeting to discuss matters of mutual importance. Please gather at coordinates 42.3601 degree N, 71.0589 degree at precisely 14:30 hours today. Come alone, but bring your complete research findings. Fear is unnecessary. Sarah's hands trembled as she recognized the coordinates. They were for a small park in Cambridge, Massachusetts, less than 10 minutes from her laboratory. Somehow, their observers knew exactly where each member of the research team was located and had chosen a meeting point accessible to all of them. They're not hiding anymore, Marcus whispered. Within hours, similar messages had appeared for each of the other scientists around the world, all directing them to locations near their respective research facilities. The observers were initiating contact simultaneously on every continent, suggesting a level of coordination and preparation that was both impressive and unsettling. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stared at her coordinates in Tokyo, realizing they pointed to a quiet temple garden where she often went to think. Colonel Mitchell's location was a secluded area of the Colorado Mountains near NORAD. Dr. Gutierrez was directed to a remote section of the Amazon rainforest she had visited during her research. Each location was carefully chosen, private enough for confidential discussion, but familiar enough to make the human participants feel comfortable. Even in making first contact, the observers were demonstrating their detailed understanding of human psychology. Sarah arrived at the designated coordinates 15 minutes early, her laptop bag containing printed copies of all their research. The park was nearly empty except for a few joggers and an elderly man feeding pigeons near a pond. She had half expected to see spacecraft or obviously alien technology, but everything appeared completely normal. At exactly 14:30, the air shimmered near a grove of oak trees, and a figure materialized as if stepping through an invisible doorway. Sarah's first thought was how unexpectedly ordinary the encounter felt, despite being the most extraordinary moment in human history. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. Taller than average, with smooth, scaled skin that shifted between blue and green in the afternoon sunlight. 6 eyes arranged in pairs across a broader-than-human face, and 4 arms that moved with fluid grace. Despite the alien appearance, there was something oddly reassuring about the visitor's posture and expression. "Dr. Chen," the being spoke, its voice carrying an accent that seemed to incorporate elements from multiple human languages. "I am Zara 7, Chief Observer for the Human Assessment Project. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Sarah found her voice, though it came out shakier than she had hoped. "The Human Assessment Project? Is that what this has been? Some kind of test?" "More accurately, an evaluation," Zara 7 replied, gesturing to a nearby bench. "May we sit? What I have to tell you will require some time, and I believe you will find it easier to process while comfortable." As they walked to the bench, Sarah noticed that the few other people in the park seemed completely unaware of Zara 7's presence. "They can't see you, can they?" "Perception filtering," Zara 7 explained simply. "We have found that dramatic revelations are more productive when conducted without distractions." They sat together on the bench, an alien being and a human scientist, while the world continued around them, in blissful ignorance of the conversation that was reshaping humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. "For 200 years, Zara 7 began, the Galactic Assessment Council has been observing your species. We arrived shortly after your Industrial Revolution, when your rapid technological advancement first attracted attention from the galactic monitoring systems." "Monitoring systems?" Sarah interrupted. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Dr. Chen. Species that develop space travel capability without proper ethical development often become threats to themselves and others. The Council's responsibility is to evaluate developing species and determine their potential impact on galactic civilization." Sarah felt a chill as she realized the implications. "And if a species is deemed too dangerous?" "Containment measures are implemented," Zara 7 said carefully. "Sometimes through technological interference, sometimes through more direct intervention. The galaxy has seen too many civilizations destroy themselves or others through premature access to advanced technology." "But you've been helping us," Sarah protested. "The environmental interventions, the subtle assistance during crises, you haven't been trying to contain us." Zara 7's 6 eyes focused on Sarah with what might have been surprise. "You have been more observant than we anticipated. Yes, we have provided assistance, but not because of containment protocols. We have been helping because your species has presented us with something we have never encountered before." "Which is?" "Hope," Zara 7 replied simply. Around the world, similar conversations were taking place. In Tokyo, Dr. Tanaka was speaking with an insectoid being called Vex 12, who explained the psychological assessments that had been conducted on human creativity and innovation. In Colorado, Colonel Mitchell was learning from a multi-armed observer named Keth 9 about the technological monitoring that had tracked humanity's military development and space exploration efforts. Each human scientist was hearing the same basic story. Humanity was unique among the thousands of species the Council had evaluated over millions of years. "In what way are we unique?" Sarah asked. Zara 7 was quiet for a moment, as if choosing words carefully. "Every other species we have assessed follows predictable patterns. They develop technology to gain advantages over competitors. They expand to acquire resources. They form hierarchies based on dominance. Even their cooperative behaviors are ultimately self-serving." "And humans don't do these things?" "Oh, you do all of these things," Zara 7 said. And Sarah thought she detected something like amusement in the alien's voice. "But you also do something else. You consistently sacrifice your own interests for the benefit of others, including strangers and even enemies. You create art and knowledge for no practical purpose. You ask questions about the universe even when the answers provide no survival advantage. Most remarkably, you appear to be becoming more ethical as your technology advances, not less." Sarah absorbed this information, thinking about all the human behaviors that the observers had been documenting for centuries. That's not how other species develop? Never, Zara 7 stated firmly. Technological advancement typically correlates with increased competition and aggression, as species gain the ability to dominate their environment more effectively. Your species is the first we have encountered that seems to use technological advancement as a tool for cooperation and problem-solving rather than domination. So what happens now? Sarah asked. Do we pass your test? Zara 7's expression became more serious. Dr. Chen, your species has not simply passed our assessment. You have fundamentally challenged our understanding of how intelligence and civilization develop. The Council has spent the past 50 years debating what to do with our findings about humanity. Debating? Some Council members believe you should be contacted and invited to join galactic civilization immediately. Others believe you need more time to develop before contact would be safe for you. Still others believe that contact between humans and existing galactic cultures might actually improve those cultures rather than threatening them. Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The future of human civilization was being decided by alien bureaucrats who had been secretly studying her species for 2 centuries. What do you believe? She asked. I believe, Zara 7 said slowly, that the galaxy needs humanity more than humanity needs the galaxy. Before Sarah could respond, Zara 7 continued. Your species has something that the rest of galactic civilization has lost or never possessed. You have maintained your curiosity, your creativity, and your capacity for growth even as you have developed technology that could destroy your world. More importantly, you have maintained your ability to care about others even as you have gained the power to dominate them. You sound like you're trying to convince me of something, Sarah observed. I am, Zara 7 admitted. The Council has reached a decision about humanity's future, but the implementation of that decision depends entirely on how your species chooses to respond to this revelation. What decision? Full disclosure and an invitation to join the Galactic Council as an equal member, Zara 7 replied, but with a request that humans take on a role no species has ever been asked to assume. Sarah waited, sensing that whatever came next would change everything. We want to ask humanity to help us fix what we have broken, Zara 7 said quietly. Galactic civilization has become stagnant, focused on maintaining order rather than pursuing growth. We have spent millions of years managing threats and preventing conflicts, but we have forgotten how to inspire cooperation and encourage advancement. You want us to teach you? We want to learn from you, Zara 7 corrected. Your species has demonstrated abilities that we thought were impossible. You have shown that intelligence can develop without sacrificing compassion, that technology can advance without destroying cooperation, that civilizations can grow without losing their capacity for growth and change. Around the world, the other human scientists were hearing similar requests. The galactic observers hadn't just been evaluating humanity's fitness for contact, they had been searching for solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. There's something else, Zara 7 continued. Your evaluation period was supposed to end 50 years ago. We extended it because we needed to understand how your species could consistently defy every prediction our models made about advanced civilization development. What kind of predictions? That you would fragment into competing factions once you achieved global communication technology. That you would exhaust your planet's resources through uncontrolled expansion. That you would develop weapons of mass destruction and use them to eliminate your competitors. That you would lose interest in space exploration once the initial novelty wore off. Sarah realized that humanity had indeed come close to all of these predicted outcomes multiple times throughout recent history. The observers had been watching to see if humans would succumb to the patterns that had limited other species. But we didn't, she said. You did not, Zara 7 confirmed. And every time you faced one of these crucial decision points, you chose cooperation over competition, growth over stagnation, hope over fear, even when choosing the cooperative path was more difficult and offered fewer immediate benefits. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked again. "Now," Zara 7 said, standing from the bench, "we wait to see how humanity responds to learning the truth. The Council has prepared 3 scenarios based on our psychological models of your species, which are: first, that you will be overwhelmed by the revelation and request more time before contact. Second, that you will be excited by the opportunity and accept immediate integration into galactic civilization. Third," Zara 7 paused. Third, that you will surprise us again by responding in a way we never anticipated, forcing us to revise our understanding of intelligent species development even further." Sarah laughed, despite the seriousness of the situation. "You really don't know what we're going to do you? We have observed your species for 2 centuries, Dr. Chen, and you have consistently exceeded our expectations and defied our predictions. Why would we expect that pattern to change now?" As the conversation continued, Sarah learned that similar revelations were occurring worldwide. The observers had chosen 12 initial contact points, each with a leading scientist who had discovered aspects of their presence. But this was just the beginning. "How many of you are there?" Sarah asked. "The observation station currently maintains a staff of 47 researchers and analysts," Zara 7 replied, "but the Council includes representatives from over 300 species across the galaxy. If humanity accepts membership, you would be joining the largest cooperative alliance in known galactic history." The implications were staggering. Humanity wouldn't just be making contact with one alien species. They would be joining a vast network of civilizations that had been working together for millions of years. What would be expected of us? Initially, cultural and scientific exchange, sharing your unique approaches to problem-solving and cooperation while learning from the experiences of other species. Eventually, if humanity proves as beneficial to galactic civilization as our models suggest, you might be asked to help mediate disputes between other species and assist with the development of new civilizations. You want us to become galactic counselors? You want us to become what you already are, Zara 7 corrected. A species that consistently chooses cooperation over conflict and growth over stagnation. The galaxy has been waiting millions of years for a civilization like yours. As the sun began to set over the Cambridge Park, Sarah realized that her life as a simple astrophysicist was ending and her role as humanity's representative to galactic civilization was beginning. "When do we need to give you an answer?" she asked. "There is no deadline," Zara 7 replied. "The Council has waited millions of years for a species like humanity. We can wait as long as necessary for you to make the right decision for your people. But your species is approaching the threshold of interstellar travel capability. Once you achieve faster-than-light travel, contact with galactic civilization becomes inevitable. The question is whether that contact happens on your terms or by accident." Sarah understood. Humanity could take control of its own destiny by accepting the Council's invitation, or they could stumble into galactic contact unprepared and potentially dangerous. "How long do we have to prepare?" "Based on current technological development rates, approximately 30 years before you achieve interstellar capability," Zara 7 replied. "But we are prepared to begin immediate integration if humanity chooses to accept our offer." As they stood to leave, Sarah felt the weight of representing her entire species in this conversation. "What happens to you and your observation station now?" "That depends on humanity's decision," Zara 7 replied. "If you choose to join galactic civilization, we become your liaison and integration team. If you choose to wait, we continue our observation and assistance until you are ready. If you choose to reject contact entirely, You leave us alone? We respect the autonomy of all intelligent species, Zara 7 confirmed. But Dr. Chen, in 200 years of observing humanity, we have never seen your species choose isolation over cooperation when given a clear choice. As Zara 7 began to fade back into invisibility, Sarah called out one final question. Why me? Why was I chosen to receive this information? You were not chosen, Dr. Chen, Zara 7 replied, her voice becoming distant as she disappeared. You chose yourself by refusing to ignore evidence that challenged your understanding of reality. That is perhaps the most human trait of all, the willingness to seek truth even when that truth changes everything. Sarah stood alone in the park as darkness fell, holding in her hands research that proved humanity had been under benevolent observation for centuries, and carrying in her heart an invitation to join a galactic community that desperately needed what humans could offer. The secret trials were over. 200 years of testing had concluded with humanity exceeding every expectation and challenging every assumption about the development of intelligent civilization. Now came the hardest part, deciding what to do with the knowledge that humans were not alone, had never been alone, and were being invited to help heal a galaxy that had forgotten how to hope. The next morning, Dr. Sarah Chen would begin the process of sharing this revelation with the world. But tonight, she sat on a bench in a Cambridge park, looking up at stars she now knew were filled with civilizations waiting to meet her species, and wondering if humanity was ready to become not just members of galactic society, but its teachers and healers. The trials were over. The real test was just beginning.